I was the champion, but I folded my hand. I got lonely up there in that wonderland.
Alright guys, so what is happening besides the new Bahamas record that just came out today is I'm brewing and I'm doing my annual Hellish, or even semi-annual? Anyway, but I'm doing a slight twist, so I'm gonna call it Hellish. Anyway, the twist is I am not using my typical specialty grains, which is 1 pound of specialty grains, and instead I'm using some more of this upside down 2-track malt that I used earlier in 2017 and made with this some Denhoff. I think I had 2 pounds of it in a IPA, and it added a slightly burnt, nutty, roasty taste in this IPA that I thought was unique, and I kind of liked it. So 2 pounds would be way too much in this 11-pound grain bill, so I'm using half pound. So we're going to see if it is detectable and if it adds anything to the beer. So not as clean maybe as a normal Hellish, but we will see. The other thing I'm doing is showing you guys how I do my typical brew day. I typically do the mash and wort collection at night, and then I brew the next morning. Now, recently on Brewlosophy, they did an experiment with a full overnight mash. Like, they would leave it in here overnight, then collect the wort, and then do that the next morning. The interesting thing I thought about that whole experiment was people could not distinguish in a triangle test the difference between that and a regular 60-minute mash. Now, there was, scientifically, a difference. The overnight mash was a higher original gravity and a lower final gravity. So it did make a difference. Now, if you want those things, you might pursue an overnight mash. If you just want to kind of hit your numbers where you want them to be and where you expect them to be, then you might not. The other thing is the head retention was said to be less on the overnight mash. So I'm just going to do this point of illustration how I do it. I have talked about this. I think I have shown this in videos. But also with the little Hellish twist in there, I thought, why not do a video? I'm using Imperial Organic Lager yeast. I believe it is the global strain. And I'll be pulling off a little bit of this wort and making a starter tonight, which is fun. And then doing the brew in the morning so I don't have to get DME and do that kind of stuff. And we'll see how it goes. And you should check out Bahamas. This dude is rad.
Not living it up. Not living it up while I'm away.
So I'm still using this same original mash tun from 2005. We're collecting the second runnings right now. I got 3.5 gallons of 14 bricks for the first runnings. The second runnings coming in at 7 bricks, so that will average out to 14 plus 7, 21 divided by 2 is 10 or so, but then I had a little more volume, so we're looking at 11. We're looking at about a 1044 beer right now. I'm hoping it should be close to 1050 plus or minus. So far, so good. Okay, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6. About 6.8 gallons. So I will have to decide if I need to boil some down on the stove separately, which is what I do if I kind of over collect. But now I have to get this thing all sealed up and under some blankets. So there's nothing really special about this. That is the brew pot under a whole bunch of blankets, some towels, and it's just going to sit there till the morning. I'll take a temperature, but usually it's close to 130, and usually it's quite hot. So I never have any trouble with unwanted growth of anything, and now I can split the brew day up. Here's the yeast. It's 4 months old, but I think it should be fine. Nice thing about making starters and brewing in the winter around here is plenty of snow for a nice cold ice bath. Just to wrap this up for tonight, I have the yeast starter completed, but what I did was took half a quart of the first runnings, which would have been much too strong for, or stronger, way stronger than necessary to have in a yeast starter, so I diluted it down to a gravity that is roughly what I would normally do if I was just making one with water and DME. And yeah, just otherwise it's the same. Boil it up, chill it down. Got the yeast in there. It'll go all night and be pitched tomorrow. So here we are the next morning. I've uncovered all the blankets. I'm gonna set this lid aside here and just take a temperature reading just for fun. Like I said, typically it's in the 130-ish range. It is colder these days. What do we got here? I might just have to read it to you. 135.5. So, yeah, 135.5. Still nice and hot. Gonna get the lid on, gonna get it on the burner, and get it to a boil.
Shopping, we don't show no empathy. Empty out your pockets. 10,000 feet for that talking. I got tickets, extra 5. No doubt of mine with the best alive, no tension.
Alright, guys, the boil and chill is done. And what I'm gonna do now is something that I've only done a couple of times in my however many years of brewing, because basically it takes more time, and I don't know if it helps. But I have some extra time today. The family is out of town. I'm going to give it a try. You guys can comment if you do this Whirlpool thing. So basically, on my type of system, this type of scale of brewing, if you cool the wort down, you can get a sanitized spoon. And I took it out of the sink. It's the remnants of my snow. That really helps cool it down quickly. So what you're doing is you're getting a fast Whirlpool. See if I can do this while trying to get the camera on there and doing a spin. Basically, you spin it as fast as you can, and you cover it, and you let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes, and hopefully a cone of particulates, trube, hot break, cold break, whatever you want to call it, settles in the middle, and you siphon the wort out from the side. So, if I get to that point, if I have a cone, if I'm going to do the siphon, maybe I'll get my tripod out and try to do a shot of that. But first I'll get this thing spinning, and then we'll see if a cone forms. So the problem I have, after it's been 28 minutes now, is I can't really see if there's a cone or not. But since I've come this far, I'm going to go ahead and siphon it anyway, and we'll just see what happens. Maybe I'll pause the video, and if I get cone visible, I will show it. I don't know if you can see it. I don't think you can, and I can't really mess with the camera too much. But right here, I can see some conage, and I'm starting to pick up a little bit of whatever you would call it in the siphon, but I'm only at like not even up to 4 gallons of wort. There, so there's definitely stuff right here. This is the outer top, or the top of the pile right here. So I might have to pick up some stuff, which I'm fine with, because normally I just pour it through a strainer anyway and don't really worry about it. But I definitely am trying to get as much as I can. I only have about 4 gallons right now, so I'm wondering if I boil off too much or what. But I'll get as much as I can, and I guess it's going to be whatever it's going to be. But maybe on the camera now you can see that the the break and stuff is definitely there. And I am really getting close to about all I can pick up if I'm not gonna want to pick up too much of this stuff. It's gonna be, I'm gonna get a little bit more volume if I can, but I'm starting to pick up all the stuff now. So I guess I'm gonna have to call it. So there we are. So I left behind a lot more stuff than I might have, and with how much liquid is in here, I probably would have gotten another quarter gallon or so on my regular method, but the 4 gallon mark is right here. 4, 5, so those two fingers are 4 and 5. So now what I'm going to do is think about if I want to add a little more water, and if so, how much, and how much that would dilute the gravity. It came in at about 1054. So it's about 1054, 1055. So if I diluted it by 10%, that's 5 points. That gets it down to about 1050. So I might add a half gallon of water, but let me run some numbers here quick. So the yeast starter is looking good after running all night. Let me give it a little smell here. Woo, baby, that smells just right. I went ahead and added about 0.4 gallons, which is about 10% of what I had in there. So the gravity was 1056, so if I decrease that by 10%, 5.6 points, I'm just going to call it 1050. I could stir it all up and take another reading, but it's science. It's fine. Who cares? Alright, so here go the yeast. And I am pitching this whole thing, and so this will also bring the volume up a touch. So we'll be close to 5 gallons. Try to not get the stir bar in there. I usually do okay with that. I think I pitched the stir bar one time. I imagine most people have. Alright, I got the stir bar left. So what's our volume here? That is 5. That's not too bad. I would have had a little bit more volume and been at 5 or over if I would have done my normal method, which is to use this a sanitized double mesh strainer and a strainer that goes with your schnitzel and a pitcher, and I just scoop the wort out, and the strainer catches a lot of the stuff, but I probably do get more debris in there than usual. So this will probably be a cleaner wort, which will be good because I am going to wash this yeast. I'm going to hit it with a dose of O2 and wrap this up. So I'm racking the Hellish. It's about 1.005, so it fermented pretty low. And I'm going to be doing my yeast washing process. And what I am curious to find out is if the Whirlpool siphon thing I did to get the wort into the brew fermenter has less trub in here, because if you look, this bottom of this fermenter looks a lot whiter, filled with more kind of pure white stuff, which may be yeast, than typical. So when I do the settling, and first I settle in the fermenter, I pour into the 1 gallon, then I settle in the 1 gallon, and pour off into these containers. When I do it, it'll be interesting to see how much stuff is even actually at the bottom. And I'll give it a taste here in a sec. From the look of this, there's not as much trub in it as usual when I do this whole process. The beer is fairly clear, I suppose, for this early point. It tastes like it does have a tiny bit of the toastiness from the Den Hof. I do think it's there. It adds a little toasty nuttiness, a slight bit of perhaps interesting complexity than just if it was a more typical malt or if it was an all pills malt. It's also does have a little hop bitterness, which kind of goes with that Den Hof flavor. So certainly is not bad. We'll see how long it ends up sitting before I get a spot to keg it and see how it comes out. I wanted to do a follow-up on the yeast harvesting question for the Hellish, which I did the Whirlpool for. This is my quart jar. I'm making a yeast starter now for my next beer, and I do believe it's pretty clean yeast, but I always get pretty clean yeast when I do the washing. I do think, however, I maybe got a little bit more, and that might be partially to credit for the Whirlpool and siphon method. So, like I said, I think what I might do if I'm making my first beer that I plan on washing the yeast and keeping it for subsequent batches is I might collect more volume, try to end up with, say, 5.5 gallons, knowing that I might leave some more behind in the brew kettle if I do that method. But I do think it was easier to do the washing, and I think it was maybe a little bit better. So just going to throw that video in here, and I think the next thing up will be a tasting. So we are going to taste this Hellish. It has become nice and clear. I believe I did put gelatin in this thing. I have Paul Fowler in the house. Ooh, he's out of focus, but he is in the house. And we're going to give this a try. Okay, so we're going to taste this Hellish beer. We have been talking about it a little bit. First of all, before I forget, I want to give a thank you and a shout out to BSG Handcraft. They provided the Barca Pills malt, which is an awesome malt. I love it. Support those guys. Buy the Wireman, the Raw, buy all their malts and their stuff. Also, Imperial Organic Yeast has been giving us some yeast to the Chop and Brew crew, and I used their harvest yeast, did many beers with that. Now I'm on the global strain. This was the first beer that I used the global strain for. I've been very pleased with their yeast, and I know that you guys are using some of their yeast too, so thank you to you, Imperial Organic Yeast. What else? So, just a quick touch on this. I've already touched on this, but I did the Whirlpool. I lost some volume. I think it was a little bit cleaner of a beer overall, a little bit less true, but it made it easier to harvest the yeast. So that might be something that I might do in the future. I don't know. We'll see. It is a little bit extra work, but it might be worth it. So this beer, in my mind, comes under my low-risk experiment. Yeah. I don't have that trademarked, but I like to change a little variable, but without the risk of having an entire batch be something that I don't like. So normally for an Hellish, I will do a little bit of Carapils and a little bit of Munich, in addition to whatever the base malt is, which is probably some kind of Pils malt. This time it was half pound of the 2-track malt Den Hof, which is a toasty. In fact, I don't know if it's... I still have got a lot of this, because we got 20 pounds of it. And 20 pounds of a specialty grain goes a long way. Yeah. I've only probably used a pound or two. But I used half a pound in this. Do you think that you can pick up any of that? I know that you weren't necessarily thinking. I mean, it's like a hard question, you know. Some people might, some people might not. It's sort of suggestive. I know what's in there. I might think, oh yeah, of course I can taste it.
I think if it is, it's so subtle. It's hard to pick out unless someone tells you it's in there.
I certainly can sympathize with that point of view, but I also feel like, and this could be a fact of me, you've had many of my Hellish beers over time, but I mean, I drink a lot more of it than you do, so I kind of know what it usually tastes like. I feel like there is a slight bit of a difference. It's very subtle. It's if I didn't mention it and I just said, oh, here's my Hellish that I always make, you may not know the difference.
Right.
But I think that it maybe had made a slight difference. If I would have used a full pound of it, that probably would be a different story. So this is just sort of the point, is if you do a small tweak, you might get a little bit of a change, half pound in I think it was 10.5 pounds of base malt. You know, that's not going to make a huge difference. But the beer is nice. The yeast is nice. It got nice and clear. It's crisp. It got down to 1.005, so it got pretty low.
Yeah. It's very nice. Very drinkable.
It's kind of moreish, as my coworker from England says. You want more.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll wrap up this. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks.
Empty glass cheers. Catch you later.